Hi guys, and welcome back to Wardle Road. Now, we've made it all the way to episode 20. I'm going to make this one a little bit longer as I did ask for some feedback on the last video. A lot of you said you were happy with the format. A couple said they'd like it to be a little bit longer. So I thought I'd make episode 20 a slightly longer episode, and you guys can let me know what you think afterwards. Yeah, I really appreciate all the support we've had on the series so far. It's been absolutely fantastic, and it's nice to see lots of new faces as well in the comment section of people who've just found the channel and have been following the series and catching up with the episodes. I'd also like to give a special shout out to all the channel members. I do put your names at the end of every video anyway, but I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been continuing to donate either via the GoFundMe or by leaving a donation in the comments, or as I say, becoming a channel member. And if you want to do any of that, I will leave all that information in the description of this video. But other than that, we've got lots to get on with today. This stuff will be working on the outside just to get the preparation, continued preparation for the new 16-foot beam that's going to run on the long side of the brake van. Because once that piece is in, we can then do the framework, and then the ducket can go on, and then the inside and outside paneling can be redone. And then after that, hopefully things will sort of speed up a little bit, and it'll start to look more like a brake van and less like a rotting shed. So other than that, let's roll the intros and get stuck in with today's video. Right, so what you're looking at here is the veranda, the opposite end to the one that we replaced the hand railing for very early on in the series. And that's because in order to get the 16-foot piece of wood, we've got to actually get it to fit behind this right angled piece here. And in order to get this off, I've actually, after finished digging out all the compost that you can see here, I've actually got access to these bolts here and this angle iron here as well. So the plan is to obviously replace all of these bolts, and originally these ones here, which actually have a flathead rather than going into the concrete base, they actually sit just above, and that's what held the piece of wood before obviously it rotted away in position here. But what we're actually going to do is replace the wooden beam that was here with concrete. Now, in order to explain why, what we'll do is actually go back, I want to say 4 months, to work I was doing at the other end in a similar position prior to going over the pit. So those clips never ended up appearing. So what I'm going to do is go back a few months, show you what I did with that, and then jump back here. Right, so like I said in that clip just there, I hadn't had a chance to show you guys this bit of footage, so I'm just going to quickly talk through these 3 videos and what I did in them, starting from this one first. So as you can see, this one here, this is the channel at the opposite end. Well, this is the veranda at the opposite end of the brake van, and this channel down here is where the wooden beam originally was. And as you can see, all we've been left with here is some compost. So here's me scooping it all up and sweeping it away. The next thing I do here is I angle grind these bolts. Now these bolts, unlike the corner brackets at the other end, these bolts actually went directly into the concrete. So all I did here was trim them below where the height of the concrete will be, and then I installed some new threads myself either side here to secure the new floorboards too. But this is just me removing the old ones, going through plenty of cutting discs doing this. So we flip, as you can see there, the bolts are now cut, and I'm just sweeping up the other end as well, as I'm going to do all the concrete for the start of this all in one go. And then as you can see here, there's the new threads. One's going to go either side of where the original bolts were, and then I install these into a block and then concrete over them and then trim them down flush with the level of the floor. So the second video here is the reinstallation of the door. Now it's important to put the door back in here because it makes sure that the door obviously still fits in between the gap, the clearance here between the door frame, and it keeps it all held in nicely in place while the concrete sets. You can see just at the bottom there, I have actually put the concrete in, but yeah, it's just putting the door in here just to make sure it still fit okay and nothing moved while the concrete was setting. This is a very difficult challenge to do on your own, by the way, so I suggest if you are doing this, these doors are actually really heavy, probably a lot heavier than the sort of standard door, but yeah, I managed to get it on there eventually. Right, so in this final clip here, you can see me sweeping out the area here where the wood originally ran. And on the right here, you can see the other piece of wood that will sit underneath this one. And that's got 3 bolts in it that will sit into the channel. And then when that's fixed to the framework here, those bolts will be held in place in the concrete, and then none of this will move. So there's me there just putting a piece of wood in the end to make sure none of the concrete goes out onto the bit where the horizontal beam will go. Obviously it just means I have to do less tidying up, which just makes my life easier. And then here we are fitting the piece of wood. So as you can see in my hand just about there, I'm just feeding some bolts through the original holes in the wood here, and that's just to keep this in place. And I think in a second you'll see me add a clamp as well, just to make sure this is all completely fitting perfectly there. And as you can see here, I've put the concrete base into the original wooden channel here, and I'm just waiting for it to dry. I then end up bringing it up to the same level as this concrete piece here. However, as you can see from the piece of wood behind me, it still needs to come up about an inch further to match the same level as the wooden flooring on the inside of the brake. So that will then make everything on the flooring side of things level the whole way through the brake van. This didn't take that long. It was quite quick setting concrete. However, for the actual larger sections that I need to raise up by about an inch, I'll be using a proper concrete mix, and hopefully that will come out quite nicely. So I just wanted to show you these clips quickly, basically just so you can see why I'm concreting instead of replacing these bits with wood, as all 4, as the bit behind me there and this bit here and the 2 at the other end, suffered quite badly with wood rot. And doing this method here not only keeps this all nice and fixed in place, but we don't have the issue with having to replace it a couple years down the line again. So enough of that, let's jump back to where we are now. So here's just an outside view. So this is the piece that I want to remove here, and as you can see, those are the 2 bolts that I mentioned earlier in there. Now this one here doesn't actually go into the wood, it actually just sits flush just behind the piece of metal here, so that can be replaced as well, although it's saying that it's not actually in too bad a condition considering the state of the rest of them. Now once this piece has got out, like I said, I'm then going to concrete up to this edge here, and hopefully that will fix all of that in place. I have just strapped it up there as well just to make sure nothing moves while I take that right angled piece out and this piece out, but it shouldn't, but just in case. That then just leaves us to cut this piece of metal here, which is lifted. I'm not sure what the term is where metal expands and lifts, but once I've cut that piece out and cleaned up all of this rubbish, that then leaves us with a nice run, as you can see down there, ready for a new piece of wood. Oh, that one in there is going to come out as well. As you've seen, I did down the other end, that was all concreted, because this one and these ones seem to be prone to water sort of getting near it and sitting there, not drying out. So concrete will hopefully, I don't think I've ever heard concrete rot, so we'll see how we get on with that. But yeah, the plan is now to cut all those bolts and replace them with some new ones. So I shall join you after these time lapses. Right, so from that time lapse you'd have seen me remove this corner piece and tidy up the area in here. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this bolt on the outside here is going to go into the piece of wood, so we're not going to need to concrete that in. But the 2 pieces here, I've replaced these 2 here, there's a new one there, and I've also put a new one in for the railing here as well. These are all M16 bolts, and I've put washers on these ones, and I'll put a washer and a nut on these ones once we've got these in position. So once the Hydra 80 that you just seen me apply to that back bit there has dried, I can then get some of the dry cement, the quick drying cement, the powder, put it in here, make sure these are nice and vertical and not leaning over or anything like that. And then once that's all set, we can then bolt this down and that should hopefully stay where it is as well, so the angled piece will sit back on the outside. Once the new piece of wood has arrived, we can then slot this in place and then drill a hole from that side into here to fix that bolt in, and then hopefully this should all stay together quite nicely. I'm quite pleased with how this has ended up actually. I'm normally trying to cut corners, but I think this is actually a really good way of making it work without having to worry about the wood rotting away down here. So as I say, we'll let that dry, and then the next time lapse you'll probably see is putting the dry powder in for the concrete and wetting it just to make the setting process start, and then hopefully that will lock that all in place. Nothing quite like seeing lots of nice new shiny bolts as well, very pleased with that. And as you see here, got the angle piece and even replaced the little hand railing bolt that was in there as well. So I just need someone, Charles or engineering, to spot weld that in place there so it stays there, and then you can bolt onto it from the outside. So like I said, we'll let that dry, and yeah, I will join you back in a second. Right, so a change of plan for the format for the current video. Basically, the last few days haven't been particularly well. I've had a bit of a sore throat, you might still be able to hear it now, and a cold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a time lapse of all the things I've been getting up to, and then when we come back I will show you around everything and all the bits of progress we've made, and then carry on with whatever we get up to after that. Now, as you can see in front of me, I have been painting a few things. Here is one of the lamp brackets for the rear of the brake van, and as you can see here, I've put a couple more coats of paint on the bits that hold the railings in on the side. Can't remember what the term is for them. But yeah, what we'll do now is show you some of the time lapses and bits that I've been doing, and then I'll catch up with you in a second. Right, so I can't remember exactly what clips I had in there prior to the last time lapse you saw. I think I may have mentioned that I've removed the gauge. So here it is here in its all its glory and all the various components. And that's because I've just been cleaning up a lot of the rust and things that were in here just to try and make it a little bit more presentable for when it goes back on. Here's a piece here that I have been soaking in the deoxy, and as you can see, I'll show you a picture before, and this is what it looks like now, and it's nice and clean. I've then just got to clean up the brass bits here and the glass face of it and around the side of it there, and then that'll all be good to be reassembled. And then of course I need to tidy up the tubing here and paint it, and then it should be good to go back on the brake van. As you would have seen from those time lapses, I've now got a base coat of light grey over the bottom half of this frame. Now, as you can see, the metal piece that was on the front here has been removed, and I'll show you why in a second. The area in here has all been painted with Hammerite black paint, and that's all being prepped ready, as I say, to put these right angled pieces back on. Now, the wood, all the new bits of wood, you see the cross piece there and the upright in the middle, that was all treated and sanded, treated several times prior to installation. So I'm pretty happy with how that's coming along. And as you can see, this pillar here is all primed. The one on the far side still needs a lamp bracket removed, so I haven't done the top half of that just yet. but I have painted everything in the middle here as well, including the undersides, in case anyone was wondering if I'd missed that bit. But yeah, that's all painted up, and I'm quite pleased with how that's coming along actually. So as I just mentioned, this end piece of metal was removed, and I'm not sure if you remember, but the one at the other end was in really, really good condition. However, as you can see, this one here suffered from a lot of rot, especially this area here. The area where the lamp bracket was originally is all right, but I think what the plan is for this is to probably cut the bottom section of it roughly around here and buy a replacement piece of metal the same thickness as this, and then get that welded onto that, because it just saves several £100s in buying a whole new sheet if we can just kind of repair the sheet we've got here. Even if we was just to replace the last few inches here, that would just remove most of the rubbish and then maybe a bit of patchwork here. But yeah, this has definitely suffered all the way to the end here. You can see it's rotted away. It's definitely worse in the middle. That's obviously where water's collected, as the piece of wood that was under here before has also been removed, because as you'd have seen earlier, that was just like compost. But yeah, hopefully this will be fixed shortly, and then we can get it primed and painted and fitted back on the framework. So I think the last shot you'd have seen of this was me talking about filling this bit with concrete, and as you can see, that's now been done. I haven't quite got it up to the level that I want it here. And the good thing actually about removing this metal sheet was that I'm able now to, when I fill this up, make it nice and flush with this front edge. You'll see here the right angle has been cleaned up, and it's got all fresh bolts in there as well. It could do with a bit of Hammerite black paint on it, but I just wanted to get it in position, because obviously these things are vital in making sure that the frame stays where it is. So I've done this on this side and this side just behind the camera, and that is now nice and sturdy. And if I ever need to move this or anything in the future or take it off, all I have to do is undo these bolts, undo them, and that whole corner bracket comes out if I ever decide to replace the uprights here. But while this is all nice and firm, it's going to do the job, and at least it looks nice as well now. Obviously, we've got concrete here instead of the wood that was originally through here, and the wood was, just like I mentioned earlier, compost. So concrete will remove that from ever happening again, the chances of that happening. And yeah, this will all be a nice new flush concrete base. So as you can see here, I didn't forget obviously to put a bolt in here, and that goes into the concrete block as well, in between the two upright bolts here. And that is basically the first hole of this right angle bit, and the second one I've left flush because that's going to go through that hole into the new horizontal beam hopefully, and then that again will all join together. I have test fitted it already with a smaller bolt, and it all fits on there nicely. So again, this is just a matter of cleaning it up, painting it, and then fitting it into position once the new bits of wood are here. So in the middle here we have a new piece of treated 4x3, and as you can see I've concreted it into the channel where the wood originally sat. And the plan, of course, as I mentioned, is to bring it up to the correct level here, and then once we've got a fresh piece of metal on this side, hopefully no water or anything should get down there. But again, if this piece of wood does rot at any point, it won't take much to change this centerpiece here, and the screws in the top make that much easier. Right, so I'll just give you a quick run through of the inside of the brake van. Now at the bottom down here you can see the concrete level has started to rise. I've nearly got it flush with the floor here. I've also gone out and bought a new piece of wood, enough to make up 4 of the inside pieces here, which means that once the concrete is up to the correct level, this wood will then sit flush on top of that, and then the flooring will sit right up to that. When measuring this piece, I have obviously taken into consideration that the thickness of the tongue and groove board I'm using here is slightly thinner than the original stuff, so this board here is going to have to be a tad wider, but that shouldn't take much to replicate and fit once the floor's all sorted. As we move along, you can see the gauge for the vacuum through pipe has been removed, as I mentioned earlier. We've got 3 new pieces of lovely tongue and groove board in here, and I've also gone and started filling in the old screw holes. Now the gauge, I need to try and remember roughly where the gauge will sit. I'm hoping, because I haven't moved any of the pipe work, it should go exactly where it was before. The pipe work, the down pipe here was actually held on with a piece of wood which I've saved, and I'm going to clean up, and that will go in that position there once the new tongue and groove board has been put on. So this is the last bit that I've been working on. As you can see here, the piece of wood once again had turned to compost, and that's now been removed. I've put a metal bracket on the bottom of the door here, which keeps it level with the floor. I then plan to do the same method that I did at the other end, by putting some coach bolts into the bottom of this piece of wood. That will then sit up in there, and then we can concrete it into that channel. This piece of wood here has had 2 timber screws, one that side and one that side, so that's now firm as well. And then hopefully once this is all concreted in, we'll get a little less wobble from the door there. Again, as I said earlier, this piece of wood is going to be replaced, and I've got the wood to do that. It's just a matter of making 4 of these up, and then they can be swapped over with the nice new stuff. This whole area here just looks so much better with 2 new pieces of wood, the crossbeam and the upright there. It really has brought this back to life. So what I'm going to finish the day off with is just to continue filling this channel with concrete, and then I think that'll be us wrapped up for this video. Right, I think that's where we're going to leave it for today's video. Again, I apologise for it being chop and change. As you can see, the weather is nowhere near as nice as it was at the beginning of the video, but unfortunately I came down with a slight illness, which kind of put a hold on me doing any of the talking bits, but I tried to film some time lapses, so hopefully you got a rough idea of the progress we've made so far. As always, thank you to the channel members and to anyone who's been donating. You can do that via the comment section or via the GoFundMe, which I'll leave a link to in the description. But as always, if you did enjoy, please do hit the thumbs up, and if this is your first time here, please do subscribe. I'm still waiting on a delivery of wood, which will be the new pieces, the new horizontal pieces and the framework for the duckets. And then once those bits have arrived, I'm hoping the brake van renovation and restoration will pick up some pace. But yeah, other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Please do hit the thumbs up, and I will see you all in the next episode.